Hi, my name is Stephanie Johnston. I'm Chief Correspondent for Tax Notes Today International.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bob Goulder, a contributing editor with Tax Notes. I'm coming to you from Arlington, Virginia. Stephanie, you're in Pittsburgh, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Wonderful, wonderful. We wanted to talk about the OECD's inclusive framework and the work they're doing on the digital economy and crafting together a new international consensus. And the issue that a lot of people are talking about is, should this be postponed? Because there's this pandemic thing going on. You may have even heard about it. It's been in the news. But so the Summer Olympics are being postponed, pushed back a year. Will that happen to the OECD inclusive framework? It seems like a self-imposed deadline. They could, if they wanted to, just push it back a year. So I'd like to talk to you about this, since you've been writing about it so often for our publications. And you were over there. What was it, about 6 months ago? You were actually in Paris.
It felt like a lifetime ago. Yeah, it was actually November, late November. I was there for their Pillar 1 Unified Approach on public consultation. So that was the last time I was in Paris. It's been far too long.
Now, the inclusive framework's a lot of countries. It was something like 137 countries the last time I looked at the website. Plus, there's a lot of non-state actors.
Right, yeah.
Of stakeholders. Were they all there too?
Yeah, as far as I could tell, many delegates were there. I don't know how many countries were represented in the public consultation, but I do know that the meeting coincided with the inclusive framework's last plenary, or one of their last meetings anyway. So there were a lot of delegates there during the consultation itself.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've been there on the ground, you've seen this process firsthand. Can you imagine them doing that through teleconferencing?
You know, I looked into this, and so Zoom, I understand Zoom can accommodate up to 1,000 delegates or meeting participants if you spring for a certain package. So we've been told that the OECD is continuing on with their timeline. They're aiming for political agreement on the solution by July. And that's when their next plenary session is supposed to start. So there are about 140 countries in the framework. And the OECD says that they've moved all of their meetings virtually. So they're operating through Zoom and other kind of channels. So I mean, if you look at that aspect of it, then I think it is feasible to conduct a meeting with about 140 people in the room online. But you know, I was actually talking to some folks about whether the OECD might delay the timeline a little bit. And, you know, there are benefits to having a virtual meeting, right? I mean, in this age, right?
What are the benefits?
The benefits, I mean, you get more people online. People don't have to travel. You don't waste a lot of time going back and forth. Disadvantage, obviously, is that everybody may not have the same capacity to participate. You know, maybe their Wi-Fi is kind of off, or there's no coffee breaks where a lot of discussions happen, you know, on the sidelines, a little less interaction. But, you know, as far as I know, as far as we all know, that the OECD's timeline is still on track. So.
Okay, so the show must go on, but not everyone is down with that. It seems like, looking at some of the letters that have been circulating, there are two advocacy groups, NFTC and U.S. Council for International Business. They both sent in letters saying, hold on, let's just postpone this. And to paraphrase the points that those two letters make, I think it was a letter from USCIB that said, you know, governments right now are busy. They're doing other things. They're trying to piece together stimulus package or some kind of relief for individuals, large businesses, small businesses, who knows what, in addition to all the public health stuff they're doing. Do you think that argument is going to have any traction with the OECD, that governments are currently already occupied doing other stuff?
So yeah, I did understand that they there were some groups that were sort of criticizing them for responding in that way, you know, focusing on that statement, you know, we're going to get this project done on time versus, you know, focusing on the coronavirus pandemic at hand. But, you know, to their credit, the OECD has done a lot of work related to the coronavirus crisis, publishing documents outlining suggestions for countries to adopt to keep operations going and keep economies afloat. So they have like the whole website dedicated to that. So I think that it's not really up to the OECD to decide when the project should be delayed or if it should be delayed. It's really up to the G20, which gave the group its mandate. So as long as the G20 is still on board, I don't see any kind of delay in getting the solution agreed. Of course, we are filming this on April 12th. Sorry, we're filming this on April 21st. April 21st, I forget what days. The days just run together. So anything can change. I mean, as we all know, the pandemic has changed things so quickly. So by the time this is posted, who knows what might happen. But as far as I know, like the G20, it's really up to them.
The letter from the NFTC requesting a delay seemed a little bit different to me than the letter that USCIB wrote, where the earlier letter mentioned, governments are busy doing other stuff. But the tone of the letter from the NFTC was a little bit different. It tried to make the point that we're looking at a possible global recession or depression with economic activity grinding to a halt. And if you're going to adopt tax reforms, those reforms should be focused on growth-oriented policies. And then they make the point that what we refer to as BEPS here, the inclusive framework, the two pillars, that's not really a pro-growth oriented tax reform. So if you're going to change the international tax system, why would you do so right now in a manner that isn't necessarily pro-growth? Do you think those types of arguments, which are more substantive than procedural, are going to have any traction?
I could see things from both sides. I do see their point that, countries will want to implement pro-growth measures. And on the other hand, countries are going to look at these companies, these digital companies, and say, well, these companies are the ones that are actually succeeding in this pandemic. We are relying on Zoom. We're relying on, Microsoft meetings. All these technologies, we're relying on like Uber Eats and like DoorDash and Deliveroo for.
So maybe we should be grateful to the digital economy.
So there's that discussion too. I think there's two sides to every story. I mean, yeah, this coronavirus crisis has just broken everything wide open, So why not try to push reform, like a really radical reform now? Yeah. Maybe. But you want stability too. So, I mean, you can go either way. There have been groups that have been calling for both sides, I think I personally do not have an opinion either way because I am not on the ground. I'm just observing from my reporting that there are two different sides to this.
Right.
We have option A, everything stay the same. Option B, everything's radically changed. Maybe there's something in the middle.
Yeah.
I mean, really, we don't really know but we also really don't know how this crisis is going to play out over time, right? I mean, it's only been a couple months, but so much has changed. What do you think?
Well, I recently wrote a piece on this that appeared in TaxNet, so I've sort of painted myself into a corner here by already taking a position, and I'll stick with it. And the thesis of my article was basically that it's often the case in these sort of political economy disputes that a objection to procedure or timing is often a thinly veiled criticism of the substance. I don't think it's a coincidence, in other words, that all of the groups that are calling for a delay really are lukewarm at best about the entire BEPS initiative and the pillars from the inclusive framework. Whereas the groups that are saying, no, let's keep going, the show must go on, they're the ones who seem to have an interest in either bolstering their own relevance or having these tax reforms actually implemented. So I think people are basically behaving in predictable manners, saying things that relate to their self-interest, which isn't really surprising. All taxation is like that ultimately.
Right. Yeah, there is. I mean, I will say that the project is now between a rock and a hard place, right? Because, I mean, they've got to get something done. You're seeing a lot of countries gathering up unilateral measures and kind of focusing on, what should be our response? We need money. We need tax revenue. We need to pay for all of these measures that we're doing now to keep our economies afloat. So you see India recently broadened their equalization levy to cover all e-commerce. Indonesia is starting to move toward taxing electronic transactions based on a significant economic presence. I mean, France is still going forward with its digital services tax. That's in effect. I mean, they said they're not going to collect but until the end of until the end of 2020.
The UK now has a digital service tax too.
Exactly. Yep. And they're issuing guidance on that too. So I mean, I think there is that pressure, but then there is that political momentum too, like you said. So I mean, either you get on the train or get off the next station.
Yeah, I think the train is going to keep going.
I mean, all signs point to that being true. So at this very moment, that seems very true.
When will we know for sure? When's the next big step? There's a plenary session coming up in Berlin.
Yep, Berlin, first week of July. We are, I guess I'm just waiting to hear more about that. So as far as I know, at this very moment, everything's still going on schedule.
Time will tell.
Time will tell, yeah. So here's a question. So we have established that you cannot ring fence a digital economy. I mean, this has been a cornerstone of this project. Given what we know now and how the economy is shaken out in the past few months, does that still ring true to you?
Yes, I think any attempt to ring fence the digital economy is going to create cliff effects where you're going to have companies that are going to prosper under the previous international consensus and basically sidestep whatever new consensus we have. And I don't think you can have two competing international consensus. You can't have one for the mainstream economy and one for the digital economy. Let me give you an example of pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals make their money in large part off of a business model that relies on IP. From a tax planning standpoint, it's all about IP. You transfer the patent rights to these very popular drugs offshore to an affiliate. So whenever the drugs are sold or traded worldwide, the resulting revenues don't come back to where the chemists were in the lab coming up with the formulas. It goes off to some low tax jurisdiction somewhere. That's not the digital economy at all. I don't think there's anything about pharmaceuticals that screams digital economy. But they're using IP, and because of that, they're benefiting quite nicely from the perceived shortcomings of Nexus and permanent establishment, arm's length transfer pricing, cost sharing agreements. So they're, I think, sort of targets that the inclusive framework should be thinking about. Yet they lie pretty squarely outside of the digital economy. So if you really try to have one solution just for Google and Facebook and Amazon, then I'm not really sure you're doing justice to the issue or the opportunity that's presented by it.
How do you think this is all going to shake out? Do you think that this solution is going to be agreed at the end of the year?
Well, I hate to say I'm a bit of a pessimist here. I respect the OECD. I respect the good work that they're doing. I think it's very bold and it's very ambitious. And at the end of the day, I think they will deliver these proposals to the G20 around the end of the year, whenever that is, and maybe December, maybe January of 2021. But there'll be these deliverables, and the whole world will look at it. And then governments around the world will have to decide, do they want to take up these proposals or not? And we've already had a beta test of what that looks like from the first BEPS package. They issued their final reports on the 15 action items in the fall of 2015. And in order for countries to adopt the minimum standards, they had to sign what was known as the multilateral instrument, or the MLI. Well, not everyone did. Some very large, prominent economies didn't, namely the United States and China didn't sign that thing. So if they didn't sign the last MLI, and assuming that you need sort of an MLI version 2.0 to implement the proposals coming out of the inclusive framework, I don't think they're going to sign that one either. So then what if you have a situation where, let's say, most of the EU countries sign the MLI, okay? So they're willing to go along with different nexus and profit attribution rules and a global minimum tax, but the US sits out and other countries sit out. Do you really have a consensus if such big players aren't in the game? And what does that mean for all of the unilateral measures that are out there? Consider the French digital sales tax and the UK digital sales tax. They've promised that they would repeal those unilateral taxes if the OECD can help the world come to an international consensus. Well, if some countries are not going to sign the next MLI, what does that imply for the repeal of those taxes? Are you going to see France or the UK saying, well, hold on, when we said we were going to repeal our unilateral measures, that was only if everyone goes along with the changes, and now everyone's not going along with the changes, and that's what I think you're going to get. So I actually think the unilateral measures are going to be the story of next year. If we're doing the same conversation a year from now, where the subject matter will probably be all of the unilateral measures that are springing up all over Europe and the rest of the world.
That is very pessimistic.
Yes.
And there is a lot that has to go into this. I mean, and everyone is very distracted right now. So, whatever happens will keep me busy. So keep you busy. So that's always a good thing for us, right?
Very good. Very good. Well, good talking to you, Stephanie. I certainly enjoyed reading your copy in tax notes. I look forward to your next piece.
And I am looking forward to your next piece.
All right. Stay safe in Pittsburgh.
Thanks. You too. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.